Here is the BRRRR method explained in 5 minutes. The BRRRR method is a method that we use on almost every single one of our long-term rentals and short-term rentals to, one, ensure that we're adding immediate equity, and two, to have the opportunity to take cash out at the end of the renovation if we want to. So here's what it stands for. BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And in summary, a BRRRR method is essentially a fix and flip, but instead of selling the property when you're done with the rehab, you turn around and hold it either as a long-term rental or a short-term rental. Now, here's an example of why I would use the BRRRR method. Now, let's say I am buying the property, so that is B in the BRRRR method, for $400,000. Now, this property needs work, so I'm going to then put in $100,000 in estimated renovations. So that is the rehab part of the BRRRR method. So all in, my purchase is $400,000 and I estimate $100,000 in my renovation. Now I'm going to use a hard money loan to finance this. You don't have to. You can also use a HELOC. You can also use cash if you wanted to. But let's say, for instance, I'm putting 20% down on the purchase and the rehab because hard money will finance both the purchase and the renovations. So if I put 20% down, then that means my loan amount is going to be $400,000. And with all the other cash required in the process, so for instance, I have my down payment, I have my front end closing costs, HOA fees if you have any, utility fees, your ongoing interest for the hard money loan, and then any inspections that you might want to do after the fact. So for this particular property, I would need $124,000 in cash to purchase this property and renovate it using a hard money loan. So now that I have used a hard money loan to purchase and rehab the property, which again cost me $124,000 down in order to do that, the next step is to complete the rehab and rent out the property. Now, whether I'm using this as a long-term rental or a short-term rental, I want to begin those operations. That way, I can easily refinance, which is step 4 in the process, into a long-term loan. Now, as I mentioned, I used a hard money loan to purchase and rehab it, but that is a short-term facility. So I want to then refinance it into a long-term loan, either a 20 or 30-year amortization. Now, sometimes we will do even a 15-year amortization, but long story short, you want to refinance it to ensure that you're creating a long-term loan to match your long-term investment. So here is where you have the opportunity to either keep the additional equity that you added in the home in the property, or when you're doing the refinance, you can essentially take that cash out and go use the BRRRR method again, which is the repeat part of the BRRRR method. So let me show you this in detail. Let's say that after I purchase and renovate the property, again, $400,000 buy, $100,000 rehab, that I estimate my back end value, so once the rehab is complete, that the new value of the property is $625,000. Well, if I go to refinance that property, the lender is going to require that I keep in at least 25% equity. However, since I've added more than 25% equity, I can essentially take out $64,000 of my original $124,000 that I invested. So I can then essentially keep in that additional $64,000 of equity that I've added and lower my loan to value, or I can take out this $64,000 and use that to repeat the process. So my new value on the property is now $625,000 because after the rehab, the property essentially increased in value. Now, if you remember correctly, my hard money loan amount was $400,000. When I go to refinance the property, the lender is going to require that I keep in at least 25% equity in the home, which means I can finance the additional 75%. So if I use $625,000 as my back end value, then my new loan amount is $468,000. That means that I can essentially take out $64,000 of cash at the end of the day. Now, I can choose to leave that $64,000 in the property and lower my loan to value, or I can take that cash out that I've generated from adding equity to the property and go and repeat the process, which is step 5 in the BRRRR method.